Hi, I'm Glenn Simpson, and I've collected comic books for over 40 years. As it turns out, people who like comic books like looking at other people's comics over the internet. So I thought I'd share my collection with the world. I have 180 long boxes, and plus some odds and ends and stuff like that. So we'll look at one box per video, and today we're looking at box number 2. It's all Action Comics, and this time we're going horizontal. All right, we are starting back with where we left off last time with Action Comics Weekly. We got Action Comics Weekly number 622. Nice little generic Green Lantern cover there. And we follow that up with, it just so happens, with 626 with another Green Lantern cover. All good stuff. Ooh, this one was fun. 627. We've got a Nightwing cover by Gil Kane. As I mentioned last video, back at the time, really didn't think anything was wrong with Nightwing's costume until the world started telling me, oh wait, that's a disco suit. Well, okay, I guess it is. But again, this was also really the first time we were getting Nightwing solo outside of the Titans, and that was also a lot of fun. Here we have Action Comics Weekly 631, with a Phantom Stranger cover. Looking good, looking scary, as these various stories rotate through the Action Comics Weekly series. Here we have Nightwing and Speedy Under Fire, that with a Grindberg cover, getting things going. I believe this Action Comics Weekly may have been when we found out that Speedy had a kid. I'm not sure. I don't remember that exactly, but really good fun, especially if you were a Titans fan. You were an old school Titans fan, so these were sort of new stories with those classic Titans characters. Ooh, a little risque Phantom Lady cover. New version of Phantom Lady debuting in Action Comics Weekly. Still got some Wild Dog going on in here, and Action 636. Here we've got one. I don't remember what's so special about this issue, but maybe this is the one where we find out that Speedy has a daughter. But we've got Action Comics Weekly 637. For the old school fans, we've got Jack Kirby doing a Demon cover. I'm sure he had passed by then, so I'm sure this was a sketch that somebody just allowed them to use. And they were running a Demon storyline. And then we get to 642, which I believe is the last issue of the Action Comics Weekly format. And so you have a story featuring all of the various people who were currently having individual stories. They all team up. They had tried to do this before. Actually, author Neil Gaiman had written, I think they did do it before, but there was another version of this that was done before. And author Neil Gaiman wrote it, and I think he did something in there that they didn't want, it to be canon, so they printed it later as an Elseworlds. So with the end of that, then we pick up with Action Comics 643. George Perez takes over on the art. Always a big fan. Very richly homaged cover we've got here. We're not quite to the Triangle era yet, but we're getting there. We've got this story, which was actually a fill-in by Keith Giffen and Roger Stern, and so you were kind of having this George Perez art rolling along, and then all of a sudden you get a Keith Giffen issue, which, if depending on how you feel about Giffen, might have not have been too excited. That's Action 646. 647, we resume George Perez's art, interiors. We've got the Brainiac trilogy. We begin investigating, learning more about this new post-crisis version of Brainiac. Over here in Action 650, we've got a lot of stories. There is a Perez story in there as well, or a section of the story, and it's all about exploring Superman's history in this post-crisis universe that we're now in. It was funny because they established that Superman wasn't an original member of the Justice League in this new version of the history, and yet every time there was a classic Justice League story they wanted to refer back to that he had been in, they say, oh, well, he was visiting that day. And so it was never really effective that he wasn't there. So there you got that. Then we pick up with one of my favorites, Maxima. She's a beautiful alien who has come to Earth to mate with Superman, and for some reason he says, no, I don't really understand it. Then we go to here. This was Action 654. This was part 3 of a crossover with Batman that was taking place. I think this was just taking place within the Superman books. So we're not quite Triangle era yet, but we're getting there. We're getting that interaction between the titles in that way. Here we've got Action Comics 655. Superman once again saving Lois's bacon as she's gotten herself into something of a problem. We have 658 featuring this character Sinbad. They brought back Kurt Swan to do the classic Superman artist to do this run that, again, it was running through all of the Superman titles. We are not quite numbering them yet, but we are doing stories that run through all 4 of the titles. Superman 659, again, Crisis of the Crimson Kryptonite. I guess this keeps being part 3, so this must have been, or 3 or 4. I guess it doesn't matter. I was going to say, I think there's probably an order in which each book came out in a particular week, and so that's the order that book would always be in the stories. But I guess that's not really consistent. But Superman has lost his powers due to red kryptonite, which is a post-crisis thing, as all of us Superman geeks know. And he has to wear armor, as all the good superheroes do when they lose their powers. And the biggie, semi-biggie, Superman Action Comics 662. Lois finds out the secret of that Superman is, in fact, Clark Kent. And I'm sure she handles it well. 663. We've got the Time and Time Again crossover where Superman gets thrown backwards in time, loses his memory, I believe, and has to make his way back. We jump over to Action Comics 666, this Red Glass storyline by James Hudnall. This was a little bit of a more cerebral, kind of wacky story, lots of hallucinations and things. Not the typical Superman just fighting a robot, as it were. Action Comics 667 looks to be a jam session with lots of artists and things gathering together. see. Then we get to Action Comics 670. Kind of a follow-up to the Armageddon 2001 storyline, because we've got the character Wave Rider here. I believe that as part of that storyline, a person remembered being saved by a hero in a disaster, and so now we're seeing, when they were a kid, and so now we're seeing the disaster happen here in this issue. 671, Blackout. Superman again loses his memory. Maybe he didn't lose his memory in that other one, but he finds himself on a tropical island and doesn't remember who he is, and people have to find him and bring him back. All right, Super 674, featuring Supergirl. This is, of course, what we would call Matrix, the Supergirl from the pocket dimension that was created by the Time Trapper. This was their effort to find a way to keep a Superboy in the post-crisis world, even though Superman, the main Superman, had not been Superboy when he was a kid, and coming out of that dimension was also an artificial creature called Matrix, who took on the appearance of Supergirl. Then we jump to Superman 675, Panic in the Sky. Superman and a team of heroes band together to battle Brainiac in the sky. Action Comics 682, High Tech. Don't think she's been around much after that. Superman, I'm sure he'll survive this just fine though. Then we get to, now here's going to be a weird side effect of the bagging that I do, the multi-bagging. So here we've got 683 with Superman fighting this Jackal character. And I guess I missed it. We started the Triangle era a little bit already, and then we jump to where he's already dead, because it's somewhere in here are the issues. Obviously, Superman 75 is where he actually dies. The fight with Doomsday, that bit in Action Comics is in there somewhere. But we have Funeral for a Friend, the Matrix Supergirl checking to make sure Superman's really dead. And we go to 687. I believe we're getting into the launch of the Eradicator version of Superman, the Reign of the Superman. He would be the one who stars in Action Comics, if I remember correctly. Alright, then we go to 691. We've got Superman has returned already. There's only 4 or 5 issues, maybe 8 issues packaged together, but so again, we're just hitting highlights, maybe not hitting all of the best highlights, but we're getting to see the books that people don't normally share. How about that? So, Action Comics 691 with the Cyborg Superman. We jump into 698, where, oh no, the heat vision has gone out of control on Superman. And then we move into 699. We've got this Butch Geis artwork on the cover. Great artist. Don't see him much anymore. Did some really good sort of photorealistic stuff at times in his career. Really like that. This is the Battle for Metropolis. Great cover here. 706. Also of, I say Butch Geis. I think Jackson Geis is his real name. I think he'd gone by Butch early on, and I got that stuck in my head. So really Jackson Geist is who you'd see him listed as most of the time. And he seems to be doing interiors here. Great shot there of Supergirl. This one we've got Action Comics 707. This guy, forget his name, Shadow Dragon, something like that. Kind of a Black Panther sort of character, representative of royalty from another country who is a powerful guy, and he's got some problems with Superman. Here is a Joker appearance in Superman. Kieran Dwyer artwork. Doing that. Good stuff, good stuff. We've got the post-crisis version of Parasite here in Action Comics 715. They, which, what makes sense is they kind of made him a little more, monstrous in the post-crisis world, rather than just being sort of a purple human, that kind of thing. Then in 718, we've got Demolitia, who apparently plays for keeps. So if you run into her, know that she plays for keeps. 18. Alright, we've got Action Comics 719. Guest starring Batman, and a little hint at the world's finest name. Of course, the original series where Superman and Batman would team up was World's Finest Comics, and later on they would decide, well, that's not obvious enough for people, so they kind of quit using that name for the most part for a while, but it would get referenced here and there. 726, we have Barrage attacking Superman. He's another one of those gun-toting cybernetic kinds of guys. If you're into gun-toting cybernetic kinds of guys. Final Night crossover here in number 727. The sun is being blocked or something to that effect. And it is gradually becoming colder. Superman is gradually losing his powers due to the lack of sunlight. And they are looking at ways to fix that problem. This always struck me as a little funny because Superman can fly through space, and if he's flying through space, he's not necessarily always in direct yellow sunlight. So does this mean he can't fly through space for very long? But this was also not a version of Superman who did a lot of flying through space unaided, so let's just see. And we have jumped to Action Comics 734, Electric Superman, Superman Blue. We've got, there was a lot of subplots going on here. You had this guy who was from the new version of Kandor, which, because Superman was the only Kryptonian, then Kandor could not be full of Kryptonians, so it was a city that just had a hodgepodge of different aliens, and this guy, whose name I forget, had, escaped and idolized Superman, so he got a suit of his own, and since he wasn't using it, became a sort of Superman running around. But of course he was not very attractive looking, and so people were more afraid of him than anything else. Let's see. We've got 735. I believe this guy is called Savior. He's sort of he worships Superman, but he does not do it in a good way or something to that effect. He's not somebody to mess with. 742. This was at the point when Superman had split into two. There was a Superman Blue and a Superman Red, and there's a connecting cover. I think it's on the Man of Steel, Superman Man of Steel issue from that month, where the other part of this cover shows up, and you can, as a two-part cover. But great art by Stuart Immonen, very underrated artist, Stuart Immonen. Let's see, I'm getting the less sort of financially valuable the issues are, the more likely they are to end up in a bigger, a pack of 8 instead of a pack of 4, so we have bigger jumps. But I guess that also correlates to possibly how interesting they are, so maybe that's okay. We've got Superman and Action Comics number 743. We've got Slam Bradley returning. He was just a private investigator type of character. I believe he shows up. He's in Action Comics number 1, or maybe he's just in Detective Comics. He's a pre-superhero character of DC's. And you have Superman Blue and Superman Red dealing with separate things there. Then it's between there and issue 750. Superman gets reconnected and gets his normal appearance back and starts kind of having what you might call normal Superman stories again. Here we are in January 1999 issue, and kind of just a classic cover. That'd make a good tattoo if somebody was inclined to such a thing. Alright, then we've got Action Comics 751. Another, I believe that is Stuart Immonen. He's doing writing and pencils. Superman heading over to Markovia. That would be the country that Geoforce and Terra were from. And even though they kind of weren't necessarily featured in these stories, it was a good, sort of Central European-y type country that they could have fictional stories happen in. Let's see, we've got Action 758. Let's see, Superman fighting a giant lobster. Hey, because Superman needs to fight a giant robot lobster every once in a while. That's just a good time, right? Much like having him fight a giant spider. 759. Strange Visitor is a character. She was, I think, from another dimension, something like that, and she needed something to hold her together, so Superman lent her his electric Superman suit to use to do that, since he wasn't using it anymore. We've got some great stories here by Randall Friends and Ron Friends, the Friends brothers. It's good to have friends. Ooh, really dipping into more of some, maybe what you might call a modern period here. We're in the June 2000 issue. We've got a cover here by, I'm drawing a blank, and and the signature is not here. The guy, he did a lot of Supergirl later, and I am drawing a blank on his name, but he's somebody that, this is the same guy that would do the Supergirl, the 2000s-ish Supergirl series, that first set of covers and things like that, or one of them. And here Superman has gotten infected by kryptonite, but Lois is also missing, and so he's having to suffer through it to help locate her. And then we get into, because he was so sick, we get to Superman going into critical condition, and just Deathstroke, the Terminator's involved. There's, at some point in this storyline, I think some people shrink down and shrink and travel through Superman's body to find some things. We've got Superboy involved. Good times. Oop, And we have 770, the reign of Emperor Joker. The Joker manages to steal Mr. Mxyzptlk's magical powers and basically changes the whole world into a kind of a crazy place. Superman he has a black suit in there, and he has to kind of wake up and smell the roses and realize what's going on. All right, Action Comics 771, Superman teaming up with Nightwing here. And the artist Walt McDaniel, who did a lot of Nightwing, or was probably doing Nightwing solo series at the time, providing the cover for that. I wonder if maybe this might have even been a story that they could have planned to do in the Nightwing book and then moved it over here. Who knows? Superman in Action Comics, number 774, Scorch, who shoots fire, Martian Manhunter, who is, that's his weakness, that's his kryptonite. That's a bad combination. There's a lot of, remember there being just a lot of psychological stuff going on in this story. Now we get to a famous one. Action 775, Who's Afraid? What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way? Superman is dealing with a little team of so-called heroes who are not afraid to kill or do damage to their enemies, and this is all about kind of how does Superman with his goody-goody attitude match up with the more modern attitudes about dealing with things. And there was actually an animated feature made based on this issue. All right, 776. Superman goes to, I believe he travels back to Krypton and in time, and there's been some, time has been shifted a couple of times, so we're kind of away from the burn Man of Steel Krypton, where it was cold and sterile, and we're kind of getting back to the pre-crisis adventurous Flash Gordon-y kind of Krypton. And in each issue, or at least each cover, they reference, places that located on this new Krypton. They were kind of trying to map it out and really define it. Here we have Action 780 with this version of General Zod. This version would kind of get ignored later. They would bring in General Zod, a more classic version of General Zod, the fact that this guy had been around would be kind of forgotten. I can't remember if there was another good history shift. That's one of the things you got to get used to with DC, is some history just kind of shifts a lot. But this was a prelude to the Our Worlds at War, which was not a bad little crossover. I can't say I remember exactly who was fighting who, but by golly, I remember being entertained by it. Let's see, we have 781, part of the Our Worlds at War, Act 781. I believe that we have a death of Hippolyta. I think you're supposed to think it's Wonder Woman, but it's actually Hippolyta, and it was a little weird that this happened in Action Comics, but it is what it is. And that was one of the sort of part of the fallout of Our Worlds at War. But it take, like so many times, she'll get better. Hey, it's Bizarro, me back. Nice little post-crisis version of Bizarro. here in Action 785, and he's ready to cause some ruckus for Superman. And then we get to this cover for Action Comics 786. Not indicative of what's going on, but it's got Pasquale Ferry. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He was his cool artist. He did that previous Bizarro cover, and I think he went on to do some X-Men stuff, if I remember correctly. He's a good artist. Then we have Return to Krypton 2, so part of the same similar thing that we were talking about a little while ago. Superman travels back to Krypton, and it is, of course, kind of a pre-crisis-y kind of Krypton, more of a fun Krypton, a place that really didn't deserve to die, as it were. And this is part of that storyline. Got a nice little classic Superman. He's got that, I didn't mention it before, he's got the black around the S, and that represents the deaths that happened in the Our Worlds at War storyline. And I believe Kingdom Come had already come out by then, with him having the black in the background, so this was also an attempt to tie into that. I'll show you. We've got Superman in Action Comics 794, The Hidden Horror of Smallville, some going back to his Superman's time in Smallville, just a little short storyline that's going on there. 797, more of Superman dealing with this helmeted version of General Zod. Good stuff. 798. This Lost Hearts was some kind of, there was a lot of people talking on the astral plane kind of things going on in this storyline, but it was running through several of the issues. But a great looking cover there. We've got Action Comics, so 800's in there, and now we have 801. This guy Bullock does some really neat old school covers. I think he's doing these covers for this storyline, and of course his art style doesn't really match the art style of the story, but he's still showing things that kind of look like things that happen in the story, and I'll show you that on the next one. But if you like old school Fleischer type Superman, he's your guy. So 802, for example, here we go. He's got the, kind of an old school Superman, but I believe this storyline involves Superman finding a world with a bunch of other superheroes, and so he's got these other heroes showing up in silhouette, but he doesn't just draw them in a way that it would be so obvious. But really cool kind of cover. We got Action Comics 805. I'm not sure who it is that's having victory and who they're having victory over, but I'm glad that they were able to win, whoever they were. Another Bullock cover. Here we have Action 806, this little 3-issue run storyline called Supergirls that featured kind of a little team up between some of the young ladies that were part of Superman's life during this time, and one of them is Tracy 13, who is the daughter of Dr. 13, the ghost hunter, who was a classic character, and she'd shown up a couple of other places, and they were trying to differentiate her as having street magic and whatnot. She would get used in various ways in the future. 809, kind of a one shot, I believe, mystery story with focusing more on Clark solving a mystery than Superman doing stuff. A little classic Bullock cover on here. Superman, you can tell, he's got the longer pants, if nothing else. That's how you know a classic Superman. He's got those longer pants. And he is leaping into the new year as he leaps into 2004. And we jump a bit. We go to Chuck Austen, controversial writer, always willing to kind of go there. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I could go either way. Got this, believe this is an Arthur Adams cover, and I'm never going to complain about an Arthur Adams cover. But Superman having an issue with, it looks like, I at first I wanted to say he's being, having a problem with Wonder Woman, but now that I look at it again, this is the points of her boots, so she's pointing this way, so she's actually, saving him. So, ladies first, getting ladies can do it for themselves. She's going to take care of whatever this is that's menacing Superman here, because they're pals. She's just a nice kind of person she is. Alright, we've got Action 818, Weapons Master. I think he's, I can't remember, I think he showed up a few years previous in a Justice League story, but good stuff. More Chuck Austen writing there. Then we get to Superman dealing with Gog and Doomsday. So Gog comes from, and Gog and Magog come from the Kingdom Come storyline. And I think there was some shenanigans here in terms of Finn, I believe, is a code name. Somebody wanted their name taken off because this editorial interfered in their story too much, something like that. This was not how the original writer wanted to go on this, so I don't think Finn is a real person. Then we jump over to this very pretty Action Comics 826, Judd Winnick writing, and Ian Churchill, that's the name I was trying to remember before. Ian Churchill writing this Superman and Shazam crossover storyline. And then we get to Sacrifice Part 2, 829. So this Sacrifice storyline was actually happening in Wonder Woman, and it crossed over to this issue for like one issue, and then it jumped back, and this was the storyline where Wonder Woman wound up killing Max Lord, and that led to everybody being mad at her, and that led to Infinite Crisis and 52 and all those sorts of things. All right, we've got. We're Gail Simone and John Byrne, by the way, writing, and or Simone is writing, Byrne is drawing. Nothing wrong with a John Byrne Superman. I don't remember the exact stuff here, but apparently, once again, Superman is shooting off, and everybody's saying, "No, you need to save us." Here we've got kind of an all-star kind of story here. Superman dealing with a very toothy dinosaur/alien here in Action Comics number 833 from January of 2006. Moving on to here, we've got Superman dealing with some stuff coming off of his background on Krypton. I remember there being something like a crystal forest. It was one of the classic, ooh, it's an alien planet. It's got weird stuff like a crystal forest. And I think this is a shout out to that. The Up, Up, and Away storyline. So Superman's coming out of this is coming out of the 1 year later, coming out of the 52 series. I believe he had lost his powers and now he's gotten them back, so he is going up, up, and away again. Written by Jeff Johns and writing by Kurt Busiek. And this is part of that storyline, which continues in here in 838. We are still 1 year later, and we are still dealing with Up, Up, and Away. And oh no, Superman's is having to stop the train as Clark Kent. Action Comics 841. So Superman's back, but are there people who don't necessarily believe he's really back or that he's really Superman? So there's this notion going around that he's not really Superman, but we know he is. Pete Woods doing the art on that. Very mid 2000s lineup here with the Jason Rush Firestorm and that kind of thing. That storyline continues into Action 642. Aliens are stealing our stuff. All of the covers of these issues for this storyline were made to look like tabloids, newspaper tabloids. But this also, I believe, this storyline introduced the auctioneer who was taking taking superheroes rather. That kind of thing. Looks like he's got a couple there in the background. And behind that, all right, now we are into the what is it called? This storyline with that's written by Jeff Johns and with Richard Donner. Richard Donner is the director of Superman the movie from the 1970s and was part of the directing of the movie Superman 2 until he came to disagreements with the producers and left, and somebody else finished the movie. And then out there somewhere there is the Superman 2 Donner cut that you can get that shows how with some of the scenes that he had shot that weren't used. And then he would go on to do lots of other movies. He did The Lethal Weapon, at least the first couple of movies. And Jeff Johns worked for him. And then Jeff Johns goes on to become a comic book writer. So here we are, kind of full circle. Jeff Johns pulling in Richard Donner to work on writing Superman. But we have a cool Action Comics Bizarro cover here. And we go to, and that continues in 646. We've got the Phantom Zone villains who are looking very, their dress is different, but at least we do have that sort of cracked mirror that is a throwback to the Donner view of the Phantom Zone from Superman 1 and Superman 2, where it's that sort of floating mirror in space look to it. And we jump a bit to 853, the countdown tie-in of Action Comics 853. Superman is dealing with a new version of the Kryptonite Man. Kryptonite Man's a classic character. It's a guy who literally has kryptonite for skin, so you can see where that would be a problem. And this was a storyline where Jimmy Olsen gets powers and is trying to help out, but isn't doing a very good job of it. Well, he gets powers again, given his overall history. And Countdown was where there were another weekly series that was taking place, and it was trying to sort of show things that were happening in the DC universe that were in and around and referencing the stuff that was actually happening in the main books, and that some of the coordination of that didn't necessarily go very well. Then we go to Action 854. Superman once again dealing with, I don't know if that's supposed to be Titano. Titano is usually a normally colored gorilla who just has kryptonite vision. This may be just a different green giant gorilla, but and we see Jimmy Olsen with his powers kind of trying to help Superman there. From there we jump to, now we have jumped to the point where at somewhere along the line, Jeff Johns and Gary Frank have released their Superman Secret Origin miniseries, and right after that series is over, then they pick up here on the main book. So you see a lot of the same supporting characters and things that were established, kind of as if not much has happened since then. And this has been a much celebrated storyline where with Superman and the Legion and dealing with Brainiac. I believe there's been some animated features done with about this storyline. So good stuff. This was also the return kind of the what you might call the early 80s Legion, the sort of classic Legion of superheroes. And that would include the Substitute Legion. So that we have Color Girl, who was originally Color Boy, and then and she caught a virus that changed her gender. Stone Boy, Chlorophyll Kid, and Fire Lad. Yes, I know their names. Good stuff. Here's a sort of a well-known cover. So during and again, this is the official, that Brainiac storyline I was talking about. And the first version of this cover that came out had a beer label on there. And for some reason, DC got feedback, got cold feet. Somebody said, no, Superman shouldn't be shown drinking actual alcoholic beverages, even though he's the only person in the world who probably could drink an alcoholic beverage and not be affected. They had to pull those covers and replace it, and very clearly make sure you know that is soda pop. So I think there are some of the original covers floating around out there to be had if you can find them. Continuing that Action Comics Brainiac, we have this scene. I think Pa Kent dies again, and that's what we're dealing with here. They'll be back. They always come back. Good or bad, they always come back. We get into this New Krypton. Replace that tape. New Krypton. They were doing these little Faces of Evil. There were some one-shots that were Faces of Evil, and then there were some that were parts of series, and they were just kind of, hey, here's this villain, and here's everything you need to know about him. And at this point, they were getting back into having different colors of kryptonite again. Everything old is new again. Let's see, we've got another classic element. We've got Mon-El being pulled out of the Phantom Zone, so we're kind of back to Mon-El being from Daxam. They had changed that a little bit when they got rid of Superboy. Then you had to have a different explanation for Mon-El. But at this point, I think they were back to having a Superboy, so therefore you could have the classic Mon-El again. And James Robinson of Starman fame was writing this, and he is dealing with the Phantom Zone. Then we get to Action 881, a little jump there. So this is the Son of Zod again, I mentioned that they brought back a classic Zod. Classic Zod had a son. That son gets aged up. So he was the original aged up Superman young man. And this was a friend of Kara's from Argo City, and that happened, I think she was in so they're in Kandor, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on. There's also a whole plot around eventually will be a plot around bringing the bottle city of Kandor, which is back to being full of Kandorians, back to size. This also, during this period, they were doing backup stories again. I guess they must have raised the price. Usually when they raise the price, that's when they start doing backup stories to sort of make up for it. And so you had Captain Atom showing up in the backups there. That goes on to Action 882. They're still dealing with the hunt for Reactron. Captain Atom is still appearing in backups. I think that was Neutron that was in the early in the last video I mentioned. Then we have 889. There's some ties in here to the friend of Kara's and the grown-up son of Zod, Lor-Zod, become a version of Nightwing and Flamebird, and then those characters in turn gain some connection to some sort of Kryptonian actual deities, and so there's some magic and such going on with that storyline, if I remember correctly. Then we have Action Comics 890 starting a storyline with coming out of the Blackest Night. Lex Luthor has clearly gotten his hands on an orange power ring, which is the ring of avarice, or selfishness. So he wants, and that reflects his businessman attitude. And I think this last little run is just him. There's not any Superman in there. And that continues with Superman, or with Luthor dealing with Gorilla Grodd. You've got a Jimmy Olsen backup. That backup featured the first comics appearance of Chloe from Smallville, the Chloe Sullivan character from Smallville, it was always a little weird because she was really, other than being kind of blonde and a reporter, she was not, nothing like the Chloe Sullivan from the comics. She just shared a name with her, so they could have given her a different name, and it would have been exactly the same story. No one would have noticed the difference. But we are heading towards the end of the first Action Comics series. Here we've got a special issue. We have an appearance of the character Death, as defined by the Sandman series, and she is here to have a little chat with Luthor. And the other interesting thing about this Jimmy Olsen storyline is they didn't finish it. I think something came up and they wound up putting out a one-shot that actually finished that series, if I remember correctly. But it is still continuing here in Action 895. Now Luthor is dealing with Vandal Savage, so he's dealing with all sorts of folks from the DC universe in his pursuit of, I don't remember what he's pursuing, but in that pursuit, here he's dealing with Brainiac, and I believe the Black Ring. Yeah, I think that might have been what he was trying to locate in his travel. So this is almost kind of like Hush. Except for the fact that it doesn't have Superman in it. It's a great way to just get a lot of DC villains in this run. We go to Action Comics 900 anniversary issue. So that Luther storyline is going on in there, but also other things. This is there was some controversy over this because Superman. There was a story where Superman goes to another country and like stops something from happening, some ruler from taking over or doing something bad to his country, and so then the government comes to him and says, hey, we were backing that ruler, we didn't want you to do that. And he's like, well, I don't work for you. And they're like, well, you're an American. And he's like, well, maybe I'm not an American, maybe I'm just a citizen of the world. And that created some ruckus at the time. Let's see. And then we get to the last issue of the first Action or Comics series, where the original Superman is dealing with, the post-crisis Superman is dealing with a bunch of Doomsdays, more than one. So that should be painful. And of course, this is all being released while they are putting together the new 52 Superman. So there's a certain amount of coasting here, but trying to give people something interesting to read while that's going on. So that takes us to, numerically speaking, to Action Comics 1 million, part of the DC 1 million crossover, where we speculated what the superheroes would be like 1 million months in the future from Action Comics #1, and the heroes of that time meet up with the heroes of now. Music of now. Then we get to the Action Comics annual. So we jump back in time a little bit. Action Comics apparently didn't really have an annual until 1987, despite its long history. And the first one it had a cool Arthur Adams. I think he does the interior art. I used to love me some Arthur Adams. In fact, I used to make Xerox copies of the pages, and I had a big book that was nothing but pages of Arthur Adams artwork from various series. I loved it so much. And here he is teaming up with Batman. Superman and Batman are teaming up. Then we jump to the number 4, the Eclipso, the Darkness Within. So back in the day, you would have lots of these crossovers that would happen in all of the annuals, and so this year it was this Eclipso, the Darkness Within, where generally some hero would get mad, and if you got mad, then Eclipso would take over, and then he could possess your body, and he could do it to multiple heroes at a time, and then somebody had to get you out of it. So and you have Shazam dealing with a out of control Eclipso controlled Superman. Let's see, then we get to the next year. We have Action Comics Annual 5. This was the Bloodlines Annual. So the Bloodlines series was every annual featured a brand new character, and Loose Cannon was one of them. He was kind of a cross between the Hulk and a mood ring. He would get big and get strong, but then he would change colors depending on what his mood was. And he is dealing with the Eradicator version of Superman there, the Kryptonian device that tried to pretend to be Superman while Superman was dead, but he wasn't really dead. But while he was recovering from his fight with Doomsday. The next annual is, we jump to 1997, Action Comics Annual number 9. This time the theme was just pulp heroes. This wasn't a tie-in or anything, but every annual kind of did these stories that were in the flavor of the old pulp novels and things like that. And a lot of them had these really cool painted covers. So if you're into painted art covers, I suggest looking up all of these Pulp Heroes annuals. And last for this box, we have this Action Comics 13. This is from 2011, so this is from the last year before we get to the New 52. And so there's a certain amount of that whole Luthor storyline that we were just looking at going on. I believe this is Lex Luthor. So I believe what we learn here is that Luthor had met Darkseid as a younger man before, growing up, growing older, losing his hair, etc., and so forth. So that's the end of that. So that's box number 2. Next time we'll pick up with box number 3, which starts with the New 52 version of Action Comics. Please subscribe, follow, whatever, so I can tell if you enjoyed this. I'm learning as I go because I'm too stubborn to learn ahead of time. Feel free to leave any questions you might have, and have a great day.